we started Haptic in 2013. It's been 11 years. Our first ever product that we actually built was a personal assistant AI chatbot for India. So this is 11 years back. At that time, we didn't even know what to call it. We just used to keep calling it personal assistant. But as you can imagine, having done this for 10 years, the last 2 years have been so fascinating for somebody like me, where obviously the meaning of the word chatbot has completely changed. You know, we got acquired along the way. I still continue running and growing the business. And then over the last 2 years, I've also gotten into early stage investing, particularly in AI startups. And then one of my big inspiration or motivations to come to T-Hub was that we founded an organization called the Tech Entrepreneurs Association of Mumbai, or TEAM, where the idea is how do we build a tech ecosystem in Mumbai, and this is hugely inspirational. Next slide, please. So, you know, to kick off AI, there's probably 5,000 quotes, 10,000 reports, and so on out there. But this was the one that when I saw the first time about 2.5 years back was really what impacted me deeply, given all the work I had been doing. You know, everybody has deep admiration for Microsoft, Bill Gates, and so on. But for him to say that the second big surprise after the graphical user interface was when he met OpenAI, genuinely meant that we're on the cusp of something special. And you know, throughout my presentation later, I will try to debunk some myths. I will also scare you that some of the hype may not be real. But I do want to set the context to say that, look, you know, unlike a lot of other technology bubbles that have come in the last 7, 8, 10 years, this one is not one. And this one is definitely a very big inflection point in just the evolution of technology. Next slide. You know, and the pace of, what's shocking about this wave is the pace of innovation. I have not slept in 3 days because this week itself and Pacific time morning, there were 2 back-to-back events. There was OpenAI launching the new model, the GPT-4o, and then there was the next day Google doing Google I/O, where they launched like 23 new products. 21 of them are not live, but 23 new products and demos. So just keeping up pace with everything that's going on is so hard. So first, myth and caution to the wind for everybody over here. If you come across somebody who says, I know about AI, they're probably lying. Nobody does. I don't. I am just trying to keep up with everything that's going on. Some of us have some experiences that we can share about some of the work we've done, but the rate at which things are moving, you know, I was in the OpenAI office about 3 weeks back, and you know, you could tell that even people over there are not really sure of where some of these things may go. So the first rule, or the first thing I try to do, particularly as a founder, is just be very humble and real, that look, keep learning every single day, and hopefully we'll get somewhere. I wanted to quickly go over this. This seems like a complicated diagram, but particularly for founders in the room or people looking to do work, it's important to just understand what the generative AI tech stack looks like. Without spending too much time, like I said, you know, there were some things that we spoke about in the previous panel, but really it starts at the bottom layer with what we call compute. So the idea of having GPUs, or gigabyte processing units, which can compute a large amount of volume together. We've been hearing about how NVIDIA as a company has been dominating in the space, but this is what the core hardware infrastructure is. On top of it typically comes, you know, cloud platforms, which store a lot of the models and data, which we obviously know about. On top of which come foundation models. So this is what companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, you know, what Gemini and other models are. So once you have this infrastructure built, what a lot of people then do is they fine-tune these models. So you'll take like an GPT-4 and you will customize a little bit to your needs. Then there's this layer of what I call ML ops. So what typically happens is, as a company or as a startup, when you're trying to deploy these models in production, you need a lot of different tooling and capability to be able to do them really well, to test them, to see what's happening. That's basically called MLOps. Then is data platforms and management. So, we keep talking about this whole idea of data sets and how data can be ingested, can be cleaned up, and where data goes in. So ton of tooling that helps you do that. And then finally, the topmost layer is what we call the applications. These are the products that you see actually live that either enterprise customers or consumers use. Next slide. So this, by the way, again, as I've been thinking about where the opportunities for startups lie, particularly Indian startups, in what we do well, I believe the opportunities are in these layers. And the reason are the following. And by the way, look, very often when I talk about this, I show this slide, very often I'll get like some person in the room stand up and be like, oh, why can we not build OpenAI in India? You maybe can. I'm not saying that, right? And I think there might be one or two of such created. But if we had to be practical and realistic of where we can really do well and where we can genuinely outperform against anybody in the world, I think it's these layers. Like, we as a country have been very good at shipping great applications, packaging them very well, selling it to the global customer. So I believe we should capitalize on those. But anyway, this compute layer, which is dominated today by 2 or 3 companies, I actually think that forget India, forget US, this is one where maybe there'll be 1 or 2 more players who will invest maybe up to $1 trillion to be able to do it. But outside of that, this is a space that's now very difficult to operate for anybody. Cloud platforms, sorry, can we go back? Yeah, cloud platforms, similar. See, foundation models, I do think there'll be maybe 1 or 2 companies in India that will build some version of an Indian foundation model. I don't know what that will look like, and I don't know when that will happen. But for the large part, this is also now a very expensive proposition, and also something that's becoming commodity that you may not want to do. But when it comes to these areas, right, providing the tooling, providing the applications, providing, what they always call, right, the shovels and the pickles during a gold rush, this is where there's immense opportunity. And this is where I think as startups, as ecosystem, as founders, if we spend enough time, there's enough to do. And I'll give you some examples. So next slide. So now I'm going to give you some examples of those areas that I talked about. So this is an example of horizontal apps. So horizontal apps is something that I think India can do. These can be like customer support, chatbots, voice bots. My company does that. There's a ton of application work that can happen in HR, right? Like, just think back for a second and imagine if you had to build an HR system completely AI first. What would that look like? It will likely be very, very different to the ones that we have today. IT service desk, right? You're logging in of tickets and managing your service desk in a place like T-Hub. Companies like ServiceNow have been doing this for like 50 years, but if you had to build it again, LLM and AI first, I think they look very different. CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot have dominated this for ages, but they are reinventing themselves. Why couldn't, a startup from India do it? Analytics and BI, similar. These are large markets, large opportunities, but what's happening over here is these are becoming fairly crowded already. There's a lot of companies trying to do AI first versions, and also these require a fair bit of capital to start. So can be done, but do remember that you'll need maybe 10, 15, $20 million even to get started because the playing field has become so competitive. Next slide. This, I think, is very exciting, and I think there is a lot of opportunity for a lot of companies to build exciting work, which is the idea of vertical apps. So vertical apps is you have a domain expertise in some sort of a domain. Could be, the hospital healthcare management really well. Could be, manufacturing really well. Could be, retail systems very well. Think about all the problems in your vertical and how you could use LLMs and AI to really solve them end to end. If you had to ask me personally, I think for India startups, this is the land grab opportunity. This is an area which typically a lot of developed economies tend to ignore because it's not cool. Like, they want to work on the foundation model, tech, and go after Salesforce. But there are massive opportunities, high impact, I mean, imagine, right? Like, I've been thinking about this forever, that, fraud detection in financial services and banks is such a large problem. If somebody who understands how these systems work very well, LLMs can do a beautiful job at solving it. But it requires you to be patient, work with the bank, understand the data systems, figure out where data storage will happen and so on, but large opportunities. Next slide. This, by the way, is very exciting. I think is a huge opportunities, but currently it's hard to see how you'll monetize them, and they'll take some time. This I like to think of as India first consumer opportunities, or the Bharat first opportunities. AI doctor, AI tutor, co-pilot for farmers, AI friend, there's AI girlfriends all over the world. I don't want to put that, but AI friend, therapy, co-pilot for your personal finances. 110% applications in this are going to be created for India. There's no doubt. The question is, what's the right timing, particularly from a business perspective? Because right now we don't know how these will monetize and how you'll make money. But if you're working on these problems, play the long game, wait out the gestation period, and there'll be enough opportunity. One more thing is, and this is a very contrarian view to all the product and deep tech companies sitting over here, but the most here and now opportunity in India for the world is actually something different, which is building a new age IT services company for India, for the world. If you think about IT services as an ecosystem, there's a growing belief in the AI community that these companies are going to be completely disrupted. Multiple reasons. First, you don't need as many people to do stuff anymore, which means you're challenging their business models in the first place. You don't need to price the services by hours anymore. If you price them on outcomes, it's a very different business. Second, the capabilities required to deploy AI-first applications tend to be very different. TCS has been upskilling over here employees to pick up generative AI skills. Sure, they'll do that, right? But imagine if there was a ground-up company built Gen AI first, pricing on outcomes, not on man hours, and doing it very differently. I like this stat the best. That in that one quarter, Accenture's generative AI revenue surpassed all VC-backed startups combined in the world. Just showing you the opportunity that is there to build something very interesting. So, very contrarian. Again, I get a lot of people judge me for this because we love building products, we love building tech, which is great. But I do think there's a product meets services angle to businesses like these. I wanted to leave with a couple of thoughts. First is, this is just a quick snapshot of what I think are notable Indian Gen AI startups today. This is not a complete list, but foundation models, there's Sarvam and Krutrim, AI cloud, there is Nesa, Yota, horizontal apps, Haptic falls in them, but there's, bunch of good companies. Vertical apps, Cure.ai is doing some phenomenal work in healthcare. Spot Draft is a legal tech company. Spine is in physiotherapy. Kisan is in farmer agriculture. Content generation, InVideo is one of our fastest growing companies. You can go to InVideo and say, make me a video that does something. They'll spit it out for you very quickly. ML Ops actually has some very exciting companies being built. Super AGI is one of the fastest growing ML Ops tools in the world now, and the founders have relocated to the Bay Area. They've done some really good work. Services, Fractal Analytics, we all know them very well. Legendary company, but they are really stepping up their growth because of what they are seeing. And this is an interesting website. This is a VC fund called Matrix, where they built a very good database. So this link, if you can just take that, they have an active database of all the Gen AI startups across sectors. And I wanted to leave you with, 2 or 3 actually most interesting companies I met in Silicon Valley recently, which, there's some things that truly blow your mind outside of the regular day-to-day stuff. And, in that, this whole concept of AI agents, which is becoming very popular, and I'll share 3 examples with you. So the first one is this app called Mindy, M-I-N-D-Y. Mindy basically says it'll act like your chief of staff. So, it's meant for executives, founders, CEOs, anybody. And what you do is you email Mindy whatever work you want. So, I basically email Mindy, hey, I'm going to T-Hub for a keynote session. Can you please tell me a little bit about T-Hub and what I should be saying? And it came back to me with an email with everything I should be doing. I asked it to do research on startups in India. I asked it to do many different things. Very seasoned engineers from Apple and Tesla building it. For anybody who craves like an executive assistant, do give it a shot. Beautiful product. This is called Multi-On. It's not launched yet, but something to watch out for. What they are basically doing is they'll give you an agent API that you can then plug into whatever you want to do. So, for example, you could basically say, let's say I'm an OTA. I am a Make My Trip. In Make My Trip, I could embed this API, and then as a user, when I come to Make My Trip, I could say, just go book the ticket for me. And then this will go and across the Make My Trip website, like as if it's a user, page by page by page, and actually book the ticket and send it to you. So, pretty interesting company, and they've not yet launched. And this you must try today. It's super amazing. This basically says you can actually build a prototype app, a functioning app in 3 minutes. It's called Marbleism is the product. So you go in and you basically say, I want to make an app, and startup founders who are building apps, challenge yourself. What app you're building, go put it here and see how good a job it does. You can go and basically say, I want to build an app for ride hailing in the city of Hyderabad, and it'll build you a prototype using end-to-end LLMs within a few minutes that you can actually start using on your phone. So how can you win? I've tried something and I hope it works. Hello, hello, hello. Can you put this on? Hello, hello. Okay. So here's what I did. Hey ChatGPT. We'll try again. It's going to work. Okay. Hey, ChatGPT, do you remember the prep that we did 1 hour or so back? Are you ready?
Just let me know, and I'll be here to assist you with your keynote speech. You've got this.
Okay, great. So what I want you to tell everybody in the room, which is hundreds of entrepreneurs, is that what are the best practices to build an AI startup?
Sure thing. Here we go. Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many passionate entrepreneurs here today. Let's dive into the best practices for building an AI startup. First, identify a real problem to solve. The best AI startups focus on addressing significant pain points in their target market. Make sure you understand the problem deeply and how AI can. Second,
I'm going to stop it. I think we get the drift. But I actually did this literally 1 hour back. I did this practice and I told ChatGPT, remember, we're going to go on stage. So this is how powerful stuff goes. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.